Hello, everyone. My name is Ayesha, and I am part of the professional services team at Modern Requirements. And today we have a special treat for you all. We're going to be diving into Copilot for DevOps as a tool for supporting product owners. There are many challenges that product owners may face, and we're going to have an opportunity to talk about ways that you can solve those problems using our tool, Copilot for DevOps, in Azure DevOps. Here are some of the challenges that we see a lot of product owners face: backlog overload, low value or unclear work items, frequent scope changes and rework, slow or unclear team communication, inconsistent documentation, and then poor cross-team visibility and alignment. We're going to launch a poll, and we'd love to hear from you. What are some of the ways that you find yourself being challenged by the situations that you face as a product owner? What are some of the challenges you experience? So the poll will be launched in a moment. Feel free to add your answers, and also feel free to drop in the chat as you're coming in. Where are you joining from? Let us know a little bit about what it is that you do. All right. So we see a few answers coming in here for what are your biggest challenges. So backlog overload seems to have quite a lot. There's quite a lot there in terms of people's challenges. It looks like scope changes and rework also have a few here. All right, it's changing a lot. So overall, it looks like a lot of the people on the call can relate to having challenges with managing the backlog. There is a lot going on all the time as you're working with your different products and feedback and stakeholder information. And so it's helpful to be able to have a tool that will support you with that. So in our session today, we're going to dive into Copilot for DevOps, which is our tool natively integrated into Azure DevOps. There are many different functions available to support you with enhancing the quality of your backlog, with increasing your stakeholder communication, as well as ensuring that there's alignment across your teams. We are Microsoft's go-to AI transformation partner, and many teams work with Copilot for DevOps to support them with increasing overall efficiency, quality, and accuracy in their projects. Copilot for DevOps is the #1 AI assistant for Azure DevOps. It is a native extension within Azure DevOps, and your enterprise data never leaves your Azure DevOps tenant. So we are covered by Azure OpenAI security. Also, you can perform AI-powered gap analyses using Copilot for DevOps. You can elicit your requirements, as well as perform a number of visualizations and mockups as well using this tool. Teams that use Copilot for DevOps say they have 10 times faster authoring, 90% fewer review cycles, and 80% cost reduction as a result of using this tool. So you came here to see how this can apply, how the tool can support you. So let's dive right in. Let's say you're working on a customer portal enhancement. You have already received stakeholder notes. Maybe you've received transcripts. Perhaps you've found Word documents that contain certain requirements that you're going to need. There are many ways that you can then turn those unstructured pieces of data into structured requirements, such as your features, your user stories, or your product backlog items, etc. So we're going to solve that first problem of having a backlog that is very sprawling and unclear by using Copilot for DevOps. Here we have an epic, which you can look at as the overarching concept or the large bucket where we're going to create our lower level requirements. You can easily open up Copilot for DevOps. And Copilot for DevOps is natively integrated into Azure DevOps, which means that it's a seamless experience for you as you're working in your Azure DevOps tenant. On our main page here, we're going to select elicit. And the elicit function can be used to suggest requirements, test cases, and other work items to ensure comprehensive coverage. Using that given input of that epic for the customer portal enhancement, we can generate out our features. But before we go there, we may want to incorporate some of our existing context, such as those transcripts. Here we have a transcript for a stakeholder meeting, some information about this possible customer portal enhancement. It's very challenging to take unstructured data like that and to pull it into the system and have it be structured as requirements. So what we'll do is we'll go into set up elicitation. We'll upload our attachment. And you might have multiple types of attachments. Maybe you have, in addition to your transcript, you might have some information in your desktop that can help with the update, such as some customer onboarding experience notes. You have a Word file. You might have your different e-commerce products, etc., that you want to utilize to work on this customer onboarding solution. So then you can upload your files here. The system is going to take the information that you've uploaded, and you can also drill down to other work items. So what this will do is it will allow you to create your entire hierarchy. So if you struggle with creating your different work items, this tool is going to speed that process up for you significantly. Once we've attached our files, we can go ahead and generate out our features. Just taking a look at the chat, and there is a greeting from someone here saying hello, product managers, hello to all of you. Thank you for joining us here today. Feel free to drop in the chat what is coming up for you as you see how quickly the system was able to generate a list of structured features. Now, each one of these features can be selected, and when you select that feature, you're going to see a preview on the right-hand side of that particular work item, structured with a title and description. You could select all of these if you'd like, or you can select individual options. And for each one of these titles, there is a separate feature that will be created. If you'd like, you can also click See More, and the system will continue to generate additional options for you. Now, you might be thinking, what if we want to make changes to these requirements before we bring them into the project? We can do that with AI Edit. AI Edit is a tool that will enable you to enhance your work items before you even publish them into your project. You can do things like make manual edits. You can also make AI suggested edits, so the system can recommend possible changes that you could make to any field in the work item. You could do things like change the length of that particular field. So you could say, let's make this a little bit longer. Maybe you're working with a stakeholder who always requires really in-depth descriptions. So now the system is going to pull together some different sections for us here. And just like that. Now, creating an in-depth feature of this nature can easily take hours, and the system is allowing us to do that very quickly. You can chat with your work items. So we can do things like update certain sections of our work items. We could ask for clarity on the work item or identify gaps. So feel free to type in the chat if there are any questions that you as a product owner or product manager find yourself asking frequently. So one of those things that come up as you're trying to work on your backlog or enhance your work items. One example that we hear a lot of the time is people want to have a quick summary of the work item so they can share it with their stakeholders. So I'm going to ask the system to create a 50-word summary of the work item for sharing with non-technical stakeholders. So we're being really specific here about what it is that we're looking for. By the way, you can always use the rewrite prompt function. The rewrite prompt function will take the prompt that has been added here, and it will enhance it for clarity, for comprehensiveness. It adds additional context to it as well. So this can be a really handy tool as you're working with the system. So I'd love to hear from some of the folks who are on the call right now. How is this landing for you so far? What are your thoughts on what you're seeing? As you can see, the system has added a summary for our stakeholders right here. Now we can, of course, do some versioning so we can see changes that have been made to this particular work item before we bring it into the project. You could always restore the original if you'd like. We'll go ahead and save and close. And now this feature has been updated. Let's go ahead and create our linked work item, and we'll pull in our features as children of the epic. So we're keeping everything traceable. Excellent. Just like that, you see, we have the work item IDs for these features, which means they've all been added into the system and they are safe in your Azure DevOps tenant. We can now drill down into any of these features to build out user stories or requirements or your product backlog items. Any type of work item that lives in your Azure DevOps instance can be created. So here we go. We're going to build out some user stories. Any output field that lives in your system can be chosen. And you can also use your custom instructions. Custom instructions allow you to do things like choose your conversation style and output length. You can change your response language. And you can also do things like add custom instructions for titles, as well as your descriptions. So you could give more context to the system. You could say something like, this list of user stories must show adherence to ISO 9001. Handy rewrite prompt can improve that. And just taking a look at the chat here, thank you so much for the comments in here. Really lovely comment. Yes, indeed, it is a powerful and useful tool. And I also do see another comment here in the chat. Is this feature similar or overlapping to any existing features in the backlog? So I think the question here is around ensuring that there is no duplication of features as you're creating them out in your system. So what I'll show you here is that as you are creating your work items, so for instance, if we look at our feature that we created, or our features we created earlier, as the system creates those work items, it's also looking at existing links. So in addition to looking at the context of your given work item and your custom instructions, as well as your attachments, it's also looking into what currently exists. So that prevents any type of duplication. That makes sure that we are creating features that are really going to enhance the overall project and cover that epic accordingly. Hopefully that answers the question. Feel free to let me know in the chat if you want any more elaboration on that one. Excellent. Now, we're creating some stories for this selected feature here. We have our custom instructions that have been added to ensure that our work items meet the ISO standard. And now we're going to generate to see the results. So I see another question here in the chat. It says, hi, we imported 2,000 requirements into ADO using a custom work item type. Can we use Copilot4DevOps to do that same analysis you did for the ISO standard, but using our own requirements in ADO? We also wanted to link the requirements to features. Is this possible? Yes, 100%. You can use publicly available standards like we're doing with the ISO. You can use internal standards, and all you need to do is feed it to the system. So provide the system with the context, which, by the way, you can do in your custom instructions. You can also do that using text blocks. So the text block that we have here allows us to essentially provide the system with additional context or instructions. You can save these text blocks so that you can use them across your projects and so that your team can use them across your projects. This is repeatable language, repeatable templates or context. And in this way, you don't have to continuously enter that information. You can essentially give the system those instructions or the standards or the procedures that it must follow when it's creating your desired information. And in addition to this, just to make sure that I fully covered that question, in another tool, which we're going to dive into shortly, we can certainly use queries of information as context. So we're going to dive into that in a few moments here. Thank you so much for the questions. This is great. And please keep the questions coming. This is a space for you as a product owner, product manager, to find out ways that you can use this tool to enhance your overall workflow. Here, the system is providing us with a list of potential user stories. And on the right-hand side, we see a preview. You're going to notice here that the system has actually aligned our work item with ISO 9001. And it's even been more specific by showing us the particular clauses that are referenced here. So this is something that you can request that the system does. It can reference specific clauses or specific sections in a standard. Now we'll go ahead and create our linked work items. Again, keeping everything traceable, our user stories will be linked to the feature. You can choose your desired link type. We'll go with the child link type here. Create. And there we go. Now these items live in Azure DevOps. So if we were to go back to our backlog here, reload, and look at that. Just like that, our backlog is structured beautifully. It's clear. It is easy to understand what needs to be built. What are we working on here? And this is definitely a way that you can save yourself a significant amount of time, but also enhance clarity as you work through your projects. So would love to hear from you in the chat. What are your thoughts on what you just saw? How could this potentially save you time or effort? And would love to hear if there are any other questions as well. Okay, excellent. Now that we have created our backlog, as product owners, we're going to want to make sure that we are analyzing these work items, that we know that they are meeting the standards that are required by the team, so that we're minimizing rework, and so that we can communicate more clearly with those various team members. Of course, backlogs can grow fast, but not every single idea should be prioritized. So how can we prioritize our work items for this project? We could select the work items and then right-click, open Copilot for DevOps, and we're going to utilize the analyze function. Analyze allows you to evaluate multiple requirements using a variety of models and methods. For this example, let's go ahead and use the Moscow method. One of the challenges that product owners face is there are so many different items in the backlog. How do you determine what the must-haves are, what the should-haves are, and the could-haves, or maybe even the won't-haves? You can do that quite simply with the analyze function. Okay. Now, the system has presented us with these 4 items as must-haves. It gives a rationale for the rating. So in this example, these items are critical for the onboarding process. They also address key security and user engagement aspects. It also does give some suggested improvements as well, so we can enhance this even further to identify and fix potential issues before deployment. Then we have 2 should-haves with rationale, 1 could have and 1 won't have. So think about how much time this could possibly save you. And I'm seeing in the chat here, I love this. It's already saved me so much time and I'm only about a week in. That is amazing. And thank you so much for that feedback. That's incredible. So if you are interested, if perhaps you haven't started using Copilot for DevOps yet and you're curious, you want to try it, there is a link at the top of the screen here that says start a free trial. Feel free to click on that link and get started, because the proof is in the pudding. When you start to play with it yourself and you use your own data, you'll be able to see the results. Now, this is one way that we can analyze our work items. Another way that we find a lot of teams benefit from analyzing their work items is by, for instance, selecting a particular story. Maybe this is a high level or high priority user story. We know that we're going to be putting this in our next sprint. This is going to be prioritized for release. And maybe we want to analyze this to see how invest ready is this story. So again, the system is going to provide us with a clear report. It's going to show us how independent, how negotiable, how valuable, estimable, small, and testable that particular story is. Again, all the rationale is provided, and then there are some suggested improvements here. For instance, when we look at a couple of these items, we might say for the small criteria, the rating is 7, which is not bad. However, we can easily improve this by splitting the user story into smaller, more manageable tasks. And as you saw with the elicit function, it's very easy to break down your work items into smaller, lower level work items. So we have an overall feasibility score of 83%. And if we want to enhance the overall feasibility score, we can go ahead and apply these recommendations. A lot of team members who use the analyze function are starting to see that there is a lower chance of rework. It's much easier to communicate with their teams. They're ensuring that their work items are prioritized appropriately. And also, of course, this highlights how you can enhance the strategic value of your specific project. Okay. So taking a look at the chat here, I'm seeing in the chat, this is amazing, wonderful, wonderful feedback. And yes, we haven't started using Copilot for DevOps yet, but hopefully soon. So absolutely, please do feel free to click the link at the top of the screen that says start a free trial. And now I'm seeing here another comment that says, I'm curious if there are any tools that could help me refine my backlog, checking for similar work items, duplicates, etc. Absolutely. For this, let's dive into the chat function. Now, the chat function, you can think of this as an assistant that lives directly in your project, supporting you with different goals that you might have. You can ask the chat questions, you can give it additional context, you can attach your files to the chat as well. So we've just created a few different work items in our project. As a product owner, you're probably going to want to create those queries for those work items so you can easily identify what is needed, identify the scope for certain tasks. You're going to want to, of course, continue to prioritize those tasks as the project goes on. So we can easily create a query using the chat. So I'm going to say, please create a query of all the work items I created today, save it to my shared queries. Anyone who's familiar with creating queries knows that sometimes it can be challenging to come up with the right syntax and the right words to use in the query. But here we go. We're simply having a conversation with our chat function, telling it what we need. And now the system has created our query here. All right. Just like that. Okay. I know that someone in the chat right now is probably cheering because, yeah, this is a very, very powerful tool. So now that you've created your query, you might want to do something like identify where there could be duplicates or potential duplicates, right? This is a fresh project, so we may not find a lot of duplication, but maybe we want to see what could a potential duplicate be? So we could say, please help me identify potential duplicates. And we're going to say use a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 means there is no duplication at all, and 10 means it is a total duplicate. I want to understand the range. And Using the rewrite prompt function can be very helpful in these situations. When you use the rewrite prompt function, you can also double check that the system interpreted your prompt correctly. So this looks good to me, so we'll send this through. Okay. And I do see another question here. I find it hard to use the Gherkin format for user stories for work that is going on top of work we already have because it doesn't know the specifics of what is already built or UI that we already have. Any tips there? Very good question. What you're looking for is the ability to add context to the system. So you want to let the system know, this is what we currently have. This is the system. This is how it works. And now we want to enhance this, or we want to add the Gherkin stories or the Gherkin scenarios for this particular enhancement. So you can provide that context in the form of an attachment. We could attach files here into the chat. Also, you can attach files in the elicit function, as you saw earlier. There are other areas as well that you can access the attach file option. And then you can also use your text blocks. So if you create a text block, which you can find here, whenever you see this icon, it means that that gives you the ability to create and manage your text blocks. You could add some information in here about the information on the story or on the particular system. For instance, I could create a new one in the shared text block so the whole team says it. And we're going to say current UI, and we'll give the system some information about the current UI. It is, etc. Right? So now that you have that information, you can always insert your text block when you see this particular icon, and then it will help you identify what the current UI is and how the enhancement will work with that original UI. So hopefully that helps. Feel free to let me know in the chat if that answers the question. And yeah, please keep the questions coming. We do have about just under 15 minutes left. And again, we're here to support you as much as possible in seeing how this tool can take away some of those pain points. So here we go. So now the system is giving us an approach to identifying the duplicates. So now I'm going to tell it, please use this approach to provide me with a report on my work items in the query. And quick best practice, you can use shortcuts. So if you want to call a query, you could use Shift star and then select your query from that particular area. We could also just tell it work items in my project. So you could technically work with all of the work items in your project. And this is where I'm going to come back to a question we had earlier today around using the existing requirements in Azure DevOps to essentially give the system context on what you want to create or what you want to build. So using the chat function here, we can, of course, create those queries of existing work items, and we can reference those existing work items quite easily. I'll try to give you an example there as well. In the chat, I see another great comment. I like work with all the work items prompt. Yes, exactly, because a lot of projects have potentially hundreds of work items. It can be very difficult to work with this manually. So just a quick reminder for anyone who is just joining us, this is a special webinar series that we are providing to support teams in moving through some of the challenges that may come up in your role. This is the product owner session, and we do have other sessions as well. So I know there are some folks here who have multiple hats, you have different roles. Feel free to join some of the other webinars that we're going to be having. And if you want to try Copilot for DevOps, you can click the Start a Free Trial link that's at the top of the screen. And I do see a question, how secure is our data? Yes, your data is secure because we keep all of the information within your Azure DevOps tenant. None of your information ever leaves your Azure DevOps tenant. And just so you have additional peace of mind, we're covered by Azure AI Security. So if you have a clear understanding of Microsoft security policies, that is exactly what you're getting when you're working with Copilot for DevOps, because we're natively integrated into Azure DevOps. Okay, excellent. So with our queries, let's say we want to use that information or use multiple work items to assist us in building something else. We could say something like, using my existing work items, please identify if any new stories or tasks are required to cover my project. And I'm gonna add an attachment here as well, just so that you can see how easily this can support you. So here in our desktop, we're going to upload these notes. I'm going to say, if any gaps are found, suggest new work items. Okay. Excellent. So another question here in the chat about what it's powered by. So you have the option of OpenAI or Azure AI to be able to power this tool. So in our Copilot for DevOps V7, which is just around the corner, we're about to launch very soon, you're going to have the ability to select GPT-5 as well as one of the models for handling your data. So that's just around the corner. And by the way, we do have a V7 webinar coming up. So if you want to see all of the new and improved enhancements, you can certainly register for that one. All right, now we have some gaps that have been identified, and the system is suggesting new work items for us. You don't have to create these work items, these are ideas, but if you like some of these ideas, you could say, please create these in my project and add them to iteration 1. Also tag them with onboarding. So you can provide the chat with multiple instructions. You can ask the system to do things for you, to take actions within your project for you as well. I do see a question here in the chat that says, we have thousands of knowledge-based documents. Can we bulk upload them and use for the results? Very good question. In order to be able to utilize large amounts of data in the form of your files or wikis or queries, etc., we do have a tool called Bring Your Own Data, BYOD. That information enables us to upload up to 100 gigabytes worth of data. So you can upload those knowledge-based documents and use those for the results with BYOD. So you can find some information on that, and maybe we can drop some information into the chat on BYOD or bring your own data. Okay, so I see that there was a small error here. So we're going to try this again. So I'm going to say, please create the work items in my project. Okay. Oh, another question. Is there anything in Copilot for DevOps that will read a visual and change to text? Yes, indeed. You can do that with the chat function. And technically, you could also do that with our elicit function as well. You could upload your files. Okay, I am having a bit of a challenge here, and I think it could be something on the back end for me. But basically, you are able to create these work items in the system, and you're able to continue working with them using the chat as your assistant, supporting you with your different functions. So yes, we could use the chat to upload attachments and essentially take a visual and change it to text. We could also, just by the way, use the SOP document generator as well. Let's say you have some files that you want to upload, some diagrams, and you want to change that into some documentation. You can certainly do that with this tool. So it's a very, very powerful tool. Again, there is a link at the top of the page allowing you to start a free trial so that you can try this out. Try this out with your own data. Now that you've seen a few of the tools that can support product owners, we'd love to hear from you in the chat. Are you excited about trying Copilot for DevOps? Which of the tools are you most excited to try? Do you want to upload some of your data and elicit those requirements, create those product backlog items? Are you excited to analyze those requirements and evaluate them for accuracy or how invest ready they are, or help to prioritize them with the Moscow method? Or are you excited to use the chat, which allows you to do so many different things, so many different applications of the chat function, everything from being able to find ways to enhance the onboarding experience for a product, or being able to create those work items or create your queries. So many different functions. Now, we are very close to the end of the session, but just because I see in the chat gap analysis on the list of things that you're excited about, I want to very quickly show you the impact assessment, which can support you in understanding the impact of change on your requirements. So, of course, change is always going to be happening, and we want to understand how that change could impact our work items. So perhaps we'll say here, the stakeholder is requesting onboarding notifications be added via text as well, instead of just email. A lot of product owners can identify with the idea of change happening constantly. Stakeholders will submit change requests, and then you have to figure out how that change is going to impact all of your other work items that you spent so much time grooming. And now what we're going to do here is we have an impact assessment. So we have this user story that has been created, or previously we created the user story. It has been given a 5 out of 5 impact rating, meaning it's a critical level impact. And here's the explanation of the impact that's been provided, as well as some follow-up tasks that we can take to make sure that we're following up and we're mitigating any risks associated with that change. And you can drill down and continue to analyze additional levels to make sure that nothing is missed, to make sure that you have everything. Okay. So taking a look in the chat, I'm seeing, I love this tool. I use the SOP document generator and the chat to create my client-facing hotfix notes. Customizable text blocks are so great. This is such wonderful feedback, and truly appreciate all of this incredible feedback. Thank you so much. So just diving into the Q&A here, just to make sure, I was looking at the chat. I want to make sure that I cover the questions here as well. I know we are coming up to the end of time, but I am able to stay for a couple more minutes just to make sure that I answer all these questions. Okay, so the first question we're going to dive into here. You mentioned it could be translated to another language. Can it work with everything in French? Yes, indeed. Absolutely, it can work with everything in French. We can use our custom instructions to change our response language. And also in Copilot for DevOps V7, we're implementing an update where the whole UI, all of these different options can be displayed in your chosen language as well. So thank you for that question. And what is the difference between dynamic prompt and chat? Do they do the same thing? There is a slight difference between dynamic prompt and chat. With the chat function, you're having more of a conversation with your system. You're asking it to take actions for you in your project. You're think of it as a conversation that's happening in your project. And dynamic prompt allows you to create these prompts in a very structured way, so you can save your template, reuse it with large amounts of data. Both of them have benefits, clear benefits. And at the same time, they also, there are certain times when you might want to use one over the other. So I would like to, just as a quick pivot here, because I know that we are all very excited about this tool, a lot of great responses in the chat here. And if you're interested in learning more, about how to use this tool, about how to use Copilot for DevOps, and different ways that you can enhance your projects, enhance your overall quality and accuracy, we do have the AI for DevOps Academy available. It is free for a limited period. It does have a value of $3,000 per organization. And as a special offering, we are allowing you to enter the Academy and to receive certifications on expert level courses to be able to prove your efficiency with Copilot for DevOps and your ability to work with AI in DevOps. So feel free to scan the barcode here if you're interested in getting started with AI for DevOps Academy. And just as a quick note, because we're talking with product owners here, I am the product owner of AI for DevOps Academy, and I use Copilot for DevOps in managing this academy. So would love to see you and continue to have the conversations around how product owners can benefit from AI and DevOps, as well as how to maximize those results, enhance your collaboration with stakeholders, make sure that you're working through your backlog quickly and seamlessly. So again, I'd like to thank you all so much for being here. Again, please feel free to scan that barcode to join the AI for DevOps Academy. I can stay for a couple more minutes as well if there are any other folks who have specific questions. I'm going to go through the chat again in the Q&A to make sure I'm not missing anything. And thank you so much to those who are having conversations in the chat as well. I think this is fantastic. This is a great opportunity to share best practices with each other as well. Thank you again so much, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This has been a webinar, special webinar specifically for product owners on Copilot for DevOps. Let us know in the chat what you'd like to see next. Let us know what your thoughts were, what you're excited to do, and hope to see you again soon. Okay, now before I jump off, let me just make sure we have and yes, I do see a question. Will there be a recording of the webinar? Yes, the recording will be made available to you. So you should receive that fairly soon via email. Let's see, any other questions here that I missed? Okay. Yeah, no, it looks like we have everything here. So thank you so much again, everybody. Really appreciate you staying on, and I hope the rest of your day goes wonderfully. Cheers for now.